what is the difference between settling and, you know, compromising, basically? I do not personally believe in settling, but then when people talk about compromises, what things can be compromised? You know, like when taking on a partner.
Mm. I call it deal breakers, actually. There are certain no-go areas. Like, you need to know yourself very well. That's why, for me, self-awareness is key before you choose to get married, because when you are self-aware, it means you know yourself. You know your strengths, you know your weaknesses, and you're doing your jihad bin nafs to fix those. However, you also need to have a healthy self-esteem. Know what you like and what you don't like. Know the things that you don't want to compromise. And that's why self-awareness helps, because for some, they will say, I don't want to marry someone who jokes with their prayers, for instance, or who is not God conscious and God fearing. And I think it's a very valid point. So you now are courting someone and you realize it's time for prayers, and the person ignores that or says you go ahead, and they don't seem to be taking things like that seriously. You see how they relate to people. Actually, for me, I tell folks that for you to know the level of piety, the level of iman of a person is based on how compassionate they are to Allah's creation. It's not whether they look the sunnah, they have the sunnah look, or they look Muslim, and they've got the beard, or, the right covering. It's about the character. How do we treat others? How do we treat our help? How do we treat people who are so-called under us? Because Allah has elevated us and tried us with that elevation. How do they interact with people that they consider not to be at par with them? Sometimes people are at par with them, but they still treat people badly. For me, that is how you assess someone's iman, someone's love for Allah, desire to please Allah, and fear of offending Allah. So those are the kind of things for me. It's not about compromise so much as deal breakers. But there are things that if you look at and you think, if they choose not to change for the rest of our lives together, I'm okay with that. Those are the kind of things I say you can just ignore, because they are not solid things that could affect your relationship with your children. They're not solid enough to affect your relationship with Allah, and so on. So that's why it's so important you have that criteria. What am I looking for? Am I realistic in what I'm looking for in a person? Do I have those qualities myself? These are all things you need to ask. Some people have a wish list so long, like 50 things, 50 qualities they want to have in a spouse, but they don't even have those qualities themselves. So if you're going to compromise on things, compromise on the kind of things that if your spouse does not change during courtship period, during the time you're getting to know each other, you're going to be okay with them continuing that for the rest of your life. Because a lot of people think, oh no, we'll fix this afterwards. Wallahi, it's a big mistake, a disaster waiting to happen. You will need to make sure you're okay with them as they are now, not as a work in progress. Not as a science experiment that when you add a few ingredients, it will suddenly disappear. We're on our best behavior during courtship. And if you're seeing bad behavior during courtship, then Allah is showing you the signs. Take it that Allah has accepted your dua and is showing you this person is most likely not good for you. And make sure, of course, you do your istikhara during that period for Allah to put his stamp of approval and guide you better in making the right decision.